Ever seen or been in an internet argument that went absolutely nowhere and did nothing but bother everyone who was involved? In 2015, Scott Cawthon began releasing teaser images for Five Nights at Freddy's 4 on his website. He called it the final chapter. It wasn't. 4 has a bad reputation for all of the new things it introduced, adding an extra confusing layer to the peaceful ending of the previous game. It was hard to tell where it would all fit in. Many people even claim it is the downfall of FNaF, or at least a shift in focus and complexity. Depending who you ask, a title may also be given to sister location instead, but that isn't the point. The first teaser for Five Nights at Freddy's 4 gave us the first look at Nightmare Freddy. Brightening the image showed the word Nightmare. The next two teasers were renders of Nightmare Bonnie and Nightmare Chica in that order, now with the text, "Was it me?" When brightened, the word Nightmare was still there. The fourth teaser had Nightmare Foxy capping off the set with the text simply saying, "or me," to finish the sentence. The word Nightmare was replaced with "out of order," and the smallest detail in this teaser is much less obvious than anything in the rest of them, but there's something in his eye. That's right, it's the number 87, and in the HTML of Scott's website, there were also 8s and 7s scattered throughout it. Immediately, the community guessed that Five Nights at Freddy's 4 would be about the bite of 87, and if that's the case, then this teaser seemed to imply that Foxy did it. Of all of the characters, Foxy seemed like the one most likely to bite the front of someone's brain out. He had sharper teeth, and in the first game, he was constantly out of order. But when the game released, it turned out to be a lot more complicated than anyone could have guessed. As much of a meme as it is, the community really had to ask themselves, was that the bite of 87? Foxy had no involvement here, though the victim's older brother who caused it did wear a mask of Foxy. The robot that bit someone was Fredbear, a predecessor to Freddy, yet in Five Nights at Freddy's 2, confirmed to be in 1987, the phone guy cannot confidently remember the name of Fredbear or the restaurant he's from.
We're going to try to contact the original restaurant owner. I think the name of the place was Fredbear's Family Diner or something like that. It was closed for years, though. I doubt we'll be able to track anybody down. So just get through one more night. Hang in there. Good night.
To make things even more complicated, an Easter egg in 4 showed the year 1983 on a TV screen. Does that mean that the year in the game has to be 1983? It would add up, but some would argue that 1983 just must have been a relevant year in the series. After all, we did watch somebody get bit by a robot. Why would that happen twice? Another oddity is that Fredbear was completely stationary when the bite happened. While in the first game, the bite of 87 is only ever brought up when Phone Guy tells you why the animatronics aren't allowed to walk during the day. In that same recording, Phone Guy tells us that the victim survived, and yet in 4, if we listen closely in the ending, we can hear the victim flatline.
So just be aware, the characters do tend to wander a bit. They're left in some kind of free roaming mode at night. Something about their servos locking up if they get turned off for too long. They used to be allowed to walk around during the day, too. But then there was the bite of 87. Yeah. It's amazing that the human body can live without the frontal lobe, you know?
What ensued was a community flame war that lasted an entire 837 days. In the time it took for clarification, 2 full games were released that created even more lore arguments. But finally, on November 6th of 2017, Scott Cawthon made a comment on Reddit regarding Matthew Patrick's then final FNaF theory. He said, "I won't go through the video point by point, but I will say this. For those of you who were really upset about the idea of mic trap, or upset about the idea of purple guy being literally purple, or hung up on 1983 versus 1987, watch MatPat's video and breathe a sigh of relief." In the game theory episode that Scott's comment refers to, MatPat says that the 4th game took place in 1983, and that Springtrap was 100% William Afton, which, yes, there was a time where there was reason to doubt that. Scott had finally put the Flame Wars to rest. So now that we're at what is common knowledge, you might be wondering, What was the 87 in Foxy's i4? What does wasn't me refer to? And what were the 87s in the source code? You might notice that there are 3s in there as well. But the 3s only showed up in the source code pretty late into the game's teasing. So in the making of this video, I've talked to a handful of people, and everyone I talk to on this subject always seems to fall into one of 2 different groups. There are those who believe that Five Nights at Freddy's 4 must have had a complete change in story mid-development, and there are those who believe that Scott was just trolling us through the source code to watch our reactions on release day. In answering the question of what was truly canon, Scott only created more questions of what his intentions were originally. The idea of a beta version of Five Nights at Freddy's 4 is interesting and exciting. Who knows what Scott might have had planned? Maybe Scott really did plan for the game to take place in 1987 and be about that bite, but he pulled out when he realized that it wouldn't work. On the other hand, why would Scott make Five Nights at Freddy's 4 about the bite of 87 when he had already heavily foreshadowed it in the second game?
We have one more event scheduled for tomorrow, a birthday. You'll be on day shift. Wear your uniform. Stay close to the animatronics and make sure they don't hurt anyone, okay?
Scott had already told us where the bite happened, exactly when it did, and who the victim was. Could he have changed his mind? Did he forget when making 4? Maybe he thought what he did in Five Nights at Freddy's 2 was too subtle and didn't hit hard enough. But then, when making Five Nights at Freddy's 4, he realized that in reality what he was making would be better as a separate series of events, causing there to be 2 different bites. The people I've talked to who believe Five Nights at Freddy's 4 was meant to be in 1987 say that what the teasers did was far beyond a red herring. Personally, I can't be completely sure either way, just like I couldn't be sure when it came to what year the game was even in back then. I'll leave it for you to decide. The answer to this question isn't really something worth arguing over. We already know what 4 canonically is in the end. Instead of arguing about something Scott was maybe, possibly, perhaps planning at one point that he never did, we're better off just trying to piece together the story of this entire thing and answer the questions we still can't solve. The bite of 83 did leave more questions. The fate of the victim is still uncertain, and I've yet to see a good answer for why Scott thought it was an okay idea to have 2 different bites, and yet only one is given cultural relevance and a title. The lesson we learned in the end is that your opinions on what is good writing in the series is not a good basis for a theory. It is what it is. That's all for today, but come back next time and I'll talk about if the toys are haunted or not.